This is how we frame the story.
Right.
And it's the end of her days, and she needs to raise that money. And so she goes in for this last desperate gamble.
I was a starving artist.
Yeah,
I had
I had
like 4 bagels. I had like 2 yogurts. I had like a few of those little small boxes of cereal. And I ran into and so I'm heading back to the tent. I like have all my groceries, and I run into him, and I'm like, I'm caught. Quick, distract, flirt. She kind of took us from abacuses to like a thinking machine. She was predicting iPhones, right? In a way. You know, it's like it's gonna send weird emojis in the middle of the night that you wish you hadn't sent. If we, were to snap our fingers and take away everything that women have contributed to, we certainly wouldn't be here.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here. Welcome to Season 1 of No Credit, the video podcast that highlights the voices and stories of women and gender diverse innovators in STEM across various backgrounds and eras to ensure that their contributions never get left out of history books. In our digital world, every time you post on social media, do a Google search, or use ChatGPT, you're doing so thanks to the contributions of Ada Lovelace, the pioneer whose work laid the foundation for modern computing and AI. The first computer programmer, Lovelace defied the norms of her time, creating algorithms that would shape the digital age. Once overshadowed by her famous father, poet Lord Byron, we now celebrate her legacy on Ada Lovelace Day every October. All right, hi, I'm Zeynep Güler-Tak, Z for short, on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I am very excited for today's show. I get to speak to some fellow storytellers. And as always, we'll parallel the stories of history's unsung heroes in the STEM and creative fields with the innovators here in the city of Vancouver. Today, we're inspired by Ada Lovelace, and I hope that you're looking that up or you already know about her because she is the brilliant mathematician who wrote the instructions for the first computer program in the 1800s. So we'll be chatting with the two brilliant creatives who brought Ada's story to the screen. We're going to talk first about, now I do want to hear about the snacks. There was a long-winded question that I asked about your favorite snack you don't share, but I would love the quick whip answers for those. Steven, what's the snack that you definitely don't share with Julie?
For a long time, it was peak friends, oddly enough, with the strawberry filling, because she wasn't huge on them, and I was just eating a whole bag with stress eating, really, probably. And they were gone, and...
You seemed fine when you were eating them. You
were
fine.
Well,
you were happy.
Stress, right?
They worked.
They cause less stress. So, Julie, what about you?
Anything cheese flavored, he won't touch it. So cheesies, yep, cheese puffs.
You balance each other really well
chips,
here.
Ketchup chips. Yeah.
Okay, I like that. All right, so let's start with one of my first questions. Julie, how did we get here?
Ooh, in my case, so I kind of had this upbringing that I grew up all over the West Coast. I was born in Whitehorse. I spent 7 years growing up in Mexico, and kind of all the points between those 2 points were fair game. So yeah, when I was down in Mexico, I was actually started working in web design and web development, which was interesting because tech was always, to me, from coming into it, I was like, oh, very male-dominated field.
Totally.
I spent, years working, adjacent to like computer science-based fields with no idea that a woman had basically kicked things off, written the first computer program, and that when we did really kind of start to dig into discovering Ada, I was kind of shocked and appalled that hadn't been common knowledge, that that she wasn't like, the mother of computers front and center. And so I think with Ada, we really wanted to do a similar thing and pay our dues and respect to this incredible woman.
Right. And so from computer science and web and that love for tech, it sounds like you really had that love for tech. How did that bring you into filmmaking? I mean, right? Nowadays it makes sense from tech to filmmaking because this technology has shaped a lot of the industry nowadays. But at the time when you were doing it, was tech even a part of filmmaking?
It was, yes, it definitely, filmmaking always, even before we started shooting digitally, technology runs through, and so much of filmmaking is based on that. But for me, it was definitely, I didn't necessarily see it as like a linear jump. It was kind of one of these things where I'd been working in tech for a while, but I'd always had that spark for film. Acting was always something that I kind of brought life into me, and I kind of had a few brushes with that with a small theater company in San Felipe where I was living. And it was one of those things that brought me joy, and I think there was like a few defining moments back then where I was like, life is long and you've got to do what you love, and as much as, you know, I had fun in tech, and the idea of pursuing that was definitely interesting. It was kind of one of those decisions where it's like, yep, this is the good, logical, stable career path that my parents will love. Like, this will set me up on a nice and neat, logical little path. And at a certain point, I was like, no, I'm an artist and I'm doomed to be chaotic. I love that. So then it was back to Vancouver for the film industry, because we have an amazing film industry here, and being Canadian, it was kind of here at Toronto, and I've always been a West Coast girl and loved Toronto, but your winters are so cold.
Yes.
So
very. Okay, and Steven, take us to today.
From the beginning.
From the very moment.
There's that phrase, they took a circuitous route to, and I think that really applies to me. It was, but right from the beginning, I'm one of three boys, and I have an older brother who's a mechanical engineer and a younger brother who's a geologist. So they're both scientists. I went the other way into arts and humanities. I was interested in writing and in cinema from very early on, although I never studied film. Sure. But I eventually got into grad school. I have a master's in German studies, German literature, but I was really working there already in history and philosophy of science, as they called it. And so I did an undergrad thesis on Goethe's science, so that's like really romantic period biology. So I was already well versed in all the names of the 18th, 19th century. Sure. And then after that, I sort of went off into explore the world more. I went up to the Yukon and did mineral exploration with my geologist brother, but I spent 3 seasons in the Yukon hiking around mountains looking for gold and silver, which I loved. I wish
Who wouldn't love that?
I would love to go do another season.
Sure, call me. Let's all do it together,
exactly.
Honestly.
And so many bear encounters and caribou and all that, all those stories. Yeah. And then I also did a season after that in the fisheries. So I was on a little trawler on the Coho Run north of Haida Gwaii into Alaskan waters for a summer. Wow. Into October. Yeah. And so because I wanted to see whales. So I joined the fisheries because I was starting to get used to this gig work, like going to the Yukon. That's a gig, and this was a gig, and that's how I then landed into film. Because like I like this, just work for a specific amount of time. Right. So then after that, I got into film, and into the industry here in Vancouver, which is great. I missed that year in Cairo.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
So you see, it's easy to skip over a lot of that. And then I just went, I was a reporter for the 2010 Olympics here. I covered the downhill events. Nice. And then I sort of took that reporter brain and I wanted to go cover what they called the Arab Spring at the time. So mass demonstrations across North Africa and the Middle East. And so I was hanging out in Tahrir Square with those million-strong demonstrations. In 2011-12.
And that's another podcast episode.
And that's a whole other thing.
Right?
But in the meantime, I also got my scuba, like my PADI certification. I got advanced wreck diving in the Red Sea while I was there.
Red Sea's gorgeous.
So that's a whole other period.
Yeah. Okay. And then we're into filmmaking.
And then let's bounce back.
Naturally, adventure just bounced straight into like.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I was collecting stories though the whole time.
Yeah. So there's that. Okay, now our audiences love. So take us to when you two lovebirds met.
We met on a set, actually, way back when, almost 10 years ago. And I was doing background, and he was key set PA, I believe. And I was coming back from craft services, where snacks for everybody working in film. And because I was
a bagel in each finger. coming back.
I was
Yeah,
a
you
starving
did.
artist. So
Yeah,
I had
you
like,
did.
I had
Come on,
like,
I need
I had like
this. I
4
need this.
bagels. I had like 2 yogurts. I had like a few of those little small boxes of cereal. And I
Those
ran into,
groceries.
yeah. And so I'm heading back to the tent. I like have all my groceries. And I run into him and I'm like, I'm caught. Quick, distract, flirt.
So he doesn't see your groceries. That's great.
And it worked. He didn't even notice the bagels.
Well, she thought I was sort of monitoring, background behavior and how
Right.
much
He was
they
the
were eating.
bagel
I did
security.
not care. I was TPAing at that time, and I was helping send with the background, sending them across the
Sure.
checking for continuity and all that.
Right.
So, but I didn't care if they were. I mean, that's what background crafty is for.
That's what it's
Eat
for.
the food.
Yeah.
Go
And
for
you were
it.
like, take it, love of my life, kind of thing. There was a moment. So,
So
there was
we-
a there was a
moment,
spark.
yeah.
There
Well,
was a
we
spark.
sat down in, I guess, the background holding tent and just
Yeah.
had a
He
wild
came in-
conversation.
He had like set up this seating area, and no one was using it. And he came in very forlornly and sat down, and he goes, "Nobody's sitting on the benches I set up." And I was like,
Very theatrical,
was
it
like,
sounds like.
"I'll bite, yeah."
All right. Okay. So now we're going to move a little bit into Ada. Ada Lovelace, obviously, she was, whether she loved it or not, she was a scientist. She was a woman in STEM. She was a mathematician, and she faced grave amounts of biases and inequities. And I would love to hear from you how you saw those. Whether from lived experience or from what you're seeing, even in our industry these days. It's not just in the STEM fields, it's happening in a lot of male-dominated industries, including film. How are we facing these? What does it look like? Sometimes it's very insidious, sometimes it's very underlying and we don't even notice it, and sometimes it's very obvious. So how are we feeling about that, especially through even knowing it through Ada's lens, right?
I think Ada's lens is super interesting because I think she definitely loved being a scientist.
Right.
And I think she had every, reasonable awareness of what she was capable of. Even
Right.
when she was dying, she's like, "You're lost, guys. Like, I knew I could do it." Like, she writes incredibly eloquently about, her mind and knowing that she knew she was onto something. And it must have been immensely frustrating for her to have been held back by so many people who didn't get on board with the vision, and yeah, what a different world it might have been,
Right?
had she been a man.
Unfortunately, we have
And
to
I'm
say
sure
right?
that burned her
Yeah.
very deeply.
Yeah.
But no, she very much was aware, and I think like even nowadays there's women doing incredible things, and I think we're very aware of how capable we are in those moments of clarity. I think there's days where we all wake up and we go, "Oh God, am I terrible at what I do?"
Right.
But I mean,
Yeah.
when we're not, giving into the imposter syndrome, I think we do have this awareness of, no, I am so able and capable of doing these things. You see situations and you're like, yeah, no, I could have done that better. Why am I not doing this?
That's it.
I think it's hard to sometimes see and know the biases, especially when you're living life as a woman, because it's just the water you swim in. It's kind of like, oh, are you not trusting me because I'm a woman? Or are you not trusting me because I look a bit young? Are you not trusting me just because I'm new and have I not earned it yet? And I think like Steve notices it sometimes more than I do, I think, where it's kind of like, why is this happening?
Just general room dynamics,
Right.
going around a table, and here's a great idea, everybody. She said it. Oh, but
and sometimes it
doesn't penetrate somehow.
Yeah, and sometimes it's stuff that I wouldn't notice because I'm like, oh, it's always been that way, hasn't it?
Right. And it's great to have allies that point out that it's not. That it's not
100%,
okay.
yeah.
That it's happening, right? Because sometimes we're just like, oh, this is just the waters, exactly like you said, the waters that we're treading in. And so Ada would have faced those to the nth degree in the time that she was living in, right? So let's switch over now really to the story that you got to tell. The 2019 short film, which has won lots of awards. And I would love to kind of get you to tell us about how she must have made an impression on the two of you, so much so that, one, you speak about her with so much passion, And two, you made a whole movie and you brought a bunch of people together to be able to tell her story on screen. So what kind of impact did she have on you?
I mean, I learned about her through studying, she was the daughter of Lord Byron, the famous poet, who she never met. And so I read out this sort of the basic details of her life one day.
He was reading Wikipedia because he does that.
Yes. And I'm like, get a load of this. Have you heard what? And I've actually never heard of this person, or I might have just didn't really sink in. And then
I was shocked because, like I said, coming from that web development computery background, I was like, what?
How is that possible, right?
What a travesty that this. I'm like, this is a name that should have absolutely been household
and it kind of just right away fit in, like, origin story here for the computer age. That's huge. And I love those kind of origin stories. Like, this is where it all started. And if you go back to the origin and you sort of twist it around like a kaleidoscope, could things have turned out differently? Could we have had an entirely alternative reality, an alternative look to our modern state?
Crazy.
And here's one figure where, yes, everything could have gone very, very differently.
It could have gone differently,
if they just, the government, the Peel administration at the time, they had actually been funding Babbage's analytical engine for a while.
Can you tell us who Babbage is?
Sorry, Babbage.
Yes. Because we know it in the world, but
Charles Babbage, he's those are kind of a duo there. They were a team. Babbage was a crazy, eccentric inventor, and a real eccentric. In fact, he stormed into the Prime Minister's office to demand more money and say, "Why aren't you funding me?" And he pissed him off so much that he got cut off.
Right.
And then he just kind of rolled with it, as he always did, and went on to other inventions. But Ada is the one who stayed with it after they sort of drifted apart a little bit and didn't work as closely anymore. And Ada's like, this thing, I'm sticking with it till the end.
Yeah.
And so she's on her own now. She knows she's racing against time. So she goes into, so this is how we frame the story.
Right.
And that it's the end of her days and she needs to raise that money. And so she goes in for this last desperate gamble to go big on the horse races.
Right.
Using her, her algorithms, as her friends call it, to try to game the system.
Because as I said, like, she knew how brilliant she was, so she knew it was a risk, but it was also like, she's like, if anybody can do it, I can.
I can do it. So she had that confidence in her.
She was
from the get-go.
She was like, she has this weird rock star swagger underneath everything, where it's a little bit like, she's like, she knew she was a genius. She was, I think women of that era were obviously expected to be demure. But she had, like, I think some ego kind of underneath that.
She was a boss.
Yeah, she was a boss. Yeah, and knew it. And
well, that's it. We already know we need to tell more of these stories. Ada's one, and this is a short film. We need the whole full film, and then we need 10 other women's stories, women scientists' stories, mathematician stories on screen. How do we tell more of these stories?
How do we tell any stories? Like, I mean, it's if we go, why are these stories important? We have to go, well, why is anyone's story important? Right. Why bother with history? Why not just go, who invented, iPhones? That's somehow important. How is Ada not just as important? And I mean, we may not know their names yet, but we certainly lean on all of their inventions and things that they've brought to society. If we were to snap our fingers and take away everything that women have contributed to, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here.
And we just have to dig a little, because even with Ada, you scratch a little bit below, if you haven't heard of her, and then you sort of start looking into her, there's a pretty robust subcultural following.
Right.
Like, she's all sorts of awards in the STEM are named after her.
Yeah.
There's a Ada Lovelace school in London. I mean, you can go on and on. There's a computer program called Ada.
Yeah.
So she's fairly prominent, actually. She should be as prominent as Alan Turing. She's not.
We're getting there.
But she's the tip of the iceberg then, and quite prominent. In fact, I actually just found out, and I should have known this before, but in the British passport,
Right.
You've got all those pages that you get your stamps on.
Yeah.
So there's 34 pages of that in the 2015 British passport. It started. They have Ada Lovelace in there.
No.
She's one of two women in 34 pages.
Well, we got
And
two. We got two.
And the other is an architect. I forget her name. She designed the Shakespeare Theatre in Stratford. But they could only come up, and they were celebrating 400 years of creativity.
Right.
That was the theme. They found two women to
They
put
should have
in
called
there.
us. Honestly, I should have called
So,
us.
and then right off the top of my head, I can, like, in the 19th century, Ada's mentor, Mary Somersville. She was
Yeah.
a very prominent, one of the most prominent scientists of the century. And there's, Mary Wollstonecraft.
Oh, yeah.
Right? She's the first feminist theorist.
Of course, we have many. We
Shelley.
even
And then we
have
could go on and on and on.
right. Yeah, we have lots
And
of them.
these are still the tip of the iceberg, like
That's
the
it.
prominent ones whose story have not been told.
Right.
The challenge, the exciting thing now is finding these stories and not telling them in necessarily the way that we've always heard them told, but telling them in a way that's fresh and new. And I mean, like what The Imitation Game did for Turing, where it really brought his humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need that for because the thing is these aren't just women's stories. These are our stories.
They're our stories. They're universal.
They're humanity stories, and I think when we create films that just bring good storytelling and reveal this, then you hope that the audience shows up and feels that journey and goes on that with them, and we all grow our awareness in a way that doesn't feel like we're like, okay, time to go to school and learn things.
Right.
It's just time to get to know our world and our existence and ourselves better through the lens of these incredible people.
You heard it here. Support our storytellers, please. Let's get more of these funded and on screen. Fun facts. Favorite place to hang out in, I mean, we love to work and play in Vancouver. Favorite place to hang out in Vancouver? Julie.
Oh, in nature, probably down at the beach.
Which one?
Ooh,
We got a
English
lot.
Bay. English Bay. We have a spot at English Bay.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, I like going out for dinner at Magari. We'll go there because it's a very tiny restaurant on the drive, and it just feels like
Oh, the drive.
going home to eat pasta.
Folks, Commercial Drive. It's like the coolest spot in Vancouver. All right, Steven.
I'm going with, well, that's spot on English Bay, of course.
I stole the spots.
Yes. There's another spot out sort of, there's a little cliff-like perch over Wreck Beach out by UBC, where you can watch the sunset.
Nice.
And I like sort of, we walk through the forest to get out to this little cliffy edge and sit there, watch the sunset.
I love that. All right. So I am going to ask your morning routines, and are they intertwined or are they separate?
They're intertwined. I feel like our morning routines are so different because our days are all so different. But we do have one thing we always do. And that is you'll get up and make coffee. And I don't really drink coffee too much because caffeine hits me hard. But he'll come in and I'll get the first 3 sips of the coffee are mine.
Poison check.
And then I'll be like, no poison today. We're good. You're good.
I love that. So she checks.
Yeah.
Oh,
She
yeah.
checks for you.
No
I like
poison so
that.
far.
Healthy
Oh, I
sips.
like that.
Yeah.
That's
And that's
good.
enough caffeine for you to get.
That's it. That's all you need. Okay, so I asked best advice you've ever received, but I always preface with you don't have to have taken it. Right. So, Steven?
I think I said that I used that Werner Herzog quote where it's just so pithy. He said, read 5 times.
That's it.
And so I have always tried to take that advice. Even when I'm just standing around, I always have a book in my hand like a total nerd.
I like that. That's the kind of nerd we like.
I think I said just keep going.
Just keep going.
It's kind of,
Keep moving.
yeah. It's not over until you stop.
That's it. Or something. Yeah, that's it. We're going to get into what do you love the most about what you do? Julie?
What I love about acting and about filmmaking is there's this magical thing I think that happens when you create a show or a film or something where the audience sits and watches it, and if it's going well and you've done a good job, suddenly you're all connected in this big, magical way to each other and to something bigger than yourselves. And it gives you this opportunity to just affect people so deeply, which we don't do in real life that often. Like, how often do you meet a stranger and suddenly you're plumbing the emotional depths of their belief system in life, changing how they think. And I think it's magical how we can do that through film. We tell stories and we affect people. And also I think there's this incredible magic quality to, you know, if two strangers meet on the opposite side of the globe and they've both seen the same film or show and it's affected them, they have something in common, and suddenly the gap's closed and they're connected. And I think that's just
wild,
an incredible thing to do with film.
Yeah. How about you?
Along the same vein, I'll take that even one step further and say that we often sit down in a cinema, in a movie theater, and say, "We're in church now, aren't we?" We started saying that. Well, it really struck me when we went to the Egyptian Theater in LA. That was my only time ever going there.
Yeah.
And it just happened, Singing in the Rain was playing, like in the 40s or whatever. And so I'm like, this is a temple. It is actually a temple.
That's a great point.
And this really drives home that we're in this magical space that is connecting this community, that we're all feeling the same thing at the same time, and it can be electrifying.
It's pretty sacred, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I do appreciate that too. So I always remind, go back to the theaters, please. Popcorn's great, and sacred place. We're gonna get into just end off with, what does credit mean to you, Julie?
Credit, honestly, I think is paying that respect to someone who has done something remarkable. And I mean, we all know that feeling of what it is to not get credit for something we've done, and we've all felt that. So let's try not to put that onto other people. Let's give credit where credit is due. We all glow a little bit when somebody sees something that we've cared about and put energy into and accomplished. We all glow a little bit when somebody sees that, acknowledges it, and you know,
let's keep going.
Let's
keep doing that, right?
Thanks us for that. Let's do that.
Yeah, credit is recognition that that film in particular is a communal project, and that every voice is creating, you know, I think someone said it takes all voices to create the spring, and that's what every crew member is doing.
Yeah. I love that.
I heard once saying that film is paint 1,000 hands holding a paintbrush trying to paint the same picture. And I think if we expand that out to, you know, the world is a massive picture. We've all got our hand on the paintbrush, and let's make it something great, and let's share that credit.
See, you heard it from our storytellers. All right. All right, so we're going to do a bit of a refresher on our Up Your IQ section, and we're going to talk a little bit about filmmaking, specifically when it comes to making a short film. This is a very quick, very condensed period when you're creating something amazing for the screen, and short films are usually under 70 minutes or 80 minutes or something like that, right? Because feature gets into longer, but in your case, tell us a little bit about how the Ada short film was made, to give us kind of that example, the real life example.
Do you want to start with Crazy Eights?
Yeah, I'll jump in with a bit about Crazy Eights. Is this you get 8 days to make a short film. It's a big competition in Vancouver, right. And 6 teams are basically chosen to do this, and we were lucky enough to get into that. Yeah. The art of making a short film is very particular, because you really only have so much real estate to work in, and especially in the case of something like Ada, where you're taking a very interesting person's entire life, and you're like, okay, well, we have to try and distill this down into, I think we ended up with about 18 minutes. Yeah.
Which was long for Crazy Eights. They don't allow that anymore.
No.
I don't think. I think
They were
it's cut
trimming
off
us.
at 12
But that
now.
must have been wild. 18 minutes feels so short.
And Steve's reading, you know, piles of biographies about her. And it came down to like, well, we're just going to do the end of her life, where it's the accumulation of kind of her work.
I love that beat the clock feel. right? And
Yeah.
that storytelling device is very common, at least in the short film, right? You really need that to anchor everything.
How late can you go in and how early can you get out and still tell that complete arc?
The world's first computer is contingent on her last desperate gamble. That was the log line. Well, that's the slogan, the tagline on the poster.
Yeah.
Killer gamble, and then we talk about gambling, right? And how she was into gambling and all that. Okay, can you tell us a little bit? How did she influence algorithms? Like, how is she the godmother of algorithms? I know, as many would know, algorithms fuel Google search and ChatGPT, and everything we do is algorithmically tied to some kind of mathematical equation that determines an outcome. How did she influence that? Where did that come from?
So she wrote the world's first computer program. This algorithm was basically it wasn't written down. It was punch cards.
Right.
So it was a very kind of simple binary system. Either it's punched or it's not. The scene with them got cut from the film, but we had them actually printed out and made.
The
punch cards.
Well, we ended on her lifting, discovering them in her desk after she dies, and her maid finds them and lifts them, and that's the end of the movie.
You do see them at the very end. But yeah, she was continually doing like mathematical algorithms because math is a huge series of algorithms, but hers were the first ones specifically designed to power this machine and take it kind of that step beyond, basic calculator status into a computer.
Totally.
She kind of took us from abacuses to like a thinking machine.
Right.
Where she was, the first program was, we're going to calculate these sequences, but she was making predictions that, this is going to, if we give it the right algorithms, it's going to compose a piece of music. It's going to send images. It's going to do, she was predicting iPhones in a way. It's like, it's going to send weird emojis in the middle of the night that you wish you hadn't sent. So she had this vision. However, when she was pressed by people, they were saying, oh, you're going to create like basically a human brain. It's like, no, it's not going to be that. So even back then she was very much a skeptic of AI, where it's like, no, it'll work with what we give it, but it's not going to think like us.
Right.
And what she specifically said is that it's not going to be able to originate thought. It's not going to have basically intrinsic intentionality like we do. That is always going to be secondary. It's going to have secondary. The programmer is going to tell it how to put all this together.
That's it.
So Alan Turing called this the Lovelace objection.
Right.
So she was both a visionary for computers, the first visionary, because Babbage, although he invented the machine, he never saw it as anything more than a calculator. And she's the one who turned that corner and said,
she's like, no.
It's going to be able to manipulate symbols in a way different. So she made that turn.
Right.
But she
still, at the same time,
had enough foresight to be keeping up with where we're at now, going like, but it's not going to be creative like we are.
Right.
So talk about a genius. She didn't even see the iPhone. She saw its limitations.
Yeah. I feel smarter and closer to you today. Thank you for that. We learned about Ada Lovelace, how she paved the way for the digital age, really, how she was incredibly ahead of her time, and how we can tell more stories like hers to benefit everyone. It's not just, like you had said, Julie, it's not just women's stories, it's stories for all of us. This is our collective history and how we have come to where we are today. And so storytelling is incredibly important. It always has been. But nowadays, the ability to influence people, the ability to make people feel more connected really is bound up in how we tell these stories. So we need people like you to continue to keep doing them. So we appreciate the time that our guests have taken to be on our podcast. Thank you so much. And I think we've proven that Lovelace's legacy is definitely alive and well and paving the way for the future of where we're headed. So, this was an easy one, and but thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you. I feel like we could have like 10 other episodes that we need to talk about some of this stuff, and I'll call you.
Future seasons.
Future seasons, exactly. Call me, right? Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
It was a pleasure. Wonderful to talk to you.
Yay!
We're going to do it again sometime.
We are going to do it again sometime. And thanks so much for tuning in to No Credit. We'll see you next episode. Thanks for tuning in to No Credit. We hope you've enjoyed hearing about the incredible stories of trailblazers in the STEM and creative fields. Together, we've challenged stereotypes and ensured their groundbreaking contributions are never left out of history books. Until next time.
This is very, okay, good for her. We landed on a space rock. Like, hello.
So when it points at you, you see it, but then it rotates away, and you see nothing.
Hers were the first ones specifically designed to power this machine and take it kind of beyond basic calculator status into a computer.
And so I just think of like all of the indirect impact it's having, and I just can't think of anything cooler.
It's okay to fail. It's okay to suck. I play piano and I'm just like, I'm not good. I'm gonna sit. And like, that's fine.
Learning to do things that for you are helpful and positive.
Yes.
Learning how to breathe, the thing that we do all the time. Right.
Yeah, we're from roughly the same cultures, the same area of the world, so we might dance a little bit while we're on screen, so just bear with us. Do you want to give us like the one-line premise? Because I feel like you've over-practiced now.
No, it's just like I have come up with the solution to all the world's problems, right? Climate, of course. We've eradicated global poverty, have true trans-species democracy, and we just had to turn back technology a little bit, and everybody has to leave by 50.